Hi guys, how you doing?
Well, how are you?
Yo,
good. Beautiful day. Good to be here.
Good. Mic check. Everyone here. Audio is good. So let's jump right in. Feel free to to go around. You can say how you doing and give brief intros. Say where you at, because I think everyone's in a different city, and then we jump into questions. I'm call on somewhere. Joy.
Look like Joy wanted to talk.
I know. He was slowly opening his mouth.
I didn't know. Hey everyone. Joy Womack, founder Goody Nation, based in Atlanta, Georgia. But we're a nonprofit that has national roots, focused on closing what we call the relationship gap for tech-focused social entrepreneurs and diverse founders.
Thanks.
I guess I'll go next. I see myself next to him. I'm Phil Dillard. I'm here in San Francisco. I'm the founder of Throughline Networks. We are a for-profit organization focused on building impact entrepreneurs and impact unicorns. We run projects and programs that explore how to solve UN Sustainable Development Goals through disruptive innovation for startups and mission-driven companies. I have also run a group here in the Bay Area of Black professional men called the Brothers of Wingtip. We have like 125 to 150 guys on our list, and we do some regular community building and fellowship with that group.
Cool. And I'm Maurice. I lead inclusion and diversity at a company called Fastly. I will not spend a bunch of time explaining what it is because it could take a while, but we provide the infrastructure to many of the biggest tech companies. Outside of like my day job, I spend my time thinking about ways in which you create, foster, and ultimately facilitate community, and especially intentional community for Black folks in particular, but folks of color more broadly. I sort of sit at the intersection of food, technology, and culture, and really sort of thinking about the ways in which you use that to facilitate the spaces that I ultimately want to see. And I am now based in Atlanta, moved from the Bay 6 months ago.
Nice. Do you two know each other? Joey, Maurice?
Yeah. You need to catch up, man.
We need to reunite, but yeah.
For sure.
Right, cool. Also, I'm curious, what led you all to kind of start your communities and your projects you work on to support, Black people or Black environment in general?
Yeah, I'll start. So I've been, I don't know if it's a gift or a curse, but for me, I see the world through the lens of potential all the time, right? And I also get it from my mother. She's like a human Facebook. And so seeing, where something over here has great potential, it has a need, and seeing something over here that has, a give, and matching those things up. And so for me, it started out by focusing on Black founders in particular about 10 or so years ago. And I, for the kind of theme of this conference, we built a community on Facebook to bring together Black people in tech, kind of a younger generation. Our first offline experience was an event called Founders Therapy. And Founders Therapy led to a hackathon for good. We brought together tons of people and just kind of went from there. So it's part genetic for me, but part also a calling to see the potential of Black founders all across the nation.
Nice.
I guess I'll go second to keep the order intact. I had a similar transition out of corporate and into the startup world where I was doing a lot of work with people, and I did a lot of conferences on lean startup and lean innovation and veteran entrepreneurship. And before I left corporate, I was running the Military Veterans Network at Charles Schwab, ERG, and also a leader at the Black Professionals at Charles Schwab, or ERG. And when I was in the startup world, I felt that there was just a gap. There weren't enough folks around who I saw who were like us. Right? And we had a couple. I bumped into a couple dinner groups, and there were things like stealth mode, but I wasn't finding a lot of regular in-person stuff. So I was a member over at the club over at LinkedIn, and I was just walking around, And it was another one of those environments. That's a nice environment, but we were a small percentage of the population. And I just saw some brothers around who I didn't know. So I said, well, I'm going to start a club inside the club. You know, they had the women of Wingtip, they had the wine club. So I started the brothers of Wingtip. And I walked up to one of the brothers I didn't know and was like, hey, I'm Phil. And then I started talking to another and another. And we were bringing friends, and then we were doing events. And we started quarterly, and then we moved to monthly during the pandemic. And we really started to build a community, because just like folks said earlier, there are a lot of times where you feel like you're alone, like you're the only you're the one of so few, you know, in a certain space, and you just need a place where you could center and you could be in a trusting group of people. And it's a little different in a professional world where it's just social. When it's not your fraternity, it's not your, it's intentionally like a black organization like the 100 or something like that, but just guys who choose to come together and help each other out. And we get a lot of strength and value from that, and a community of trusted people who just help each other out and share a lot of information and support. So it's giving to a community that that gives to each other, and ultimately, you know, creates a physical connection point where we didn't have it.
Yeah, I would say for me, honestly, like moving to the Bay is part of the reason why I felt the need to sort of create community. I felt really alone, so I moved. It's really not understanding what I was getting myself into. I moved to the Peninsula, for anyone who knows the Bay, and it was one of the worst decisions I could have made in my life. And I had come from being in DC. I went to Morehouse, so like all those sort of things were black, and I sort of thought my life should always be that way. And then I get to this place where it's the complete opposite. Everywhere I was, work, personally, you know, all the things, I just couldn't find people that felt like I connected to. And so ultimately decided that I needed to either like shut up or go home, decided not to go home, and started to create and think about the ways in which I could bring people together. A new food was one of those opportunities. So I ultimately moved to Oakland and started to just like find opportunities to bring people together. So started by hosting like this men of color, like brunch thing that I would do for MLK. And I did it for 4 years. And so what I found is each year would grow. First year we had 12 people. The last one, it was like 200 people. And so I'm really sort of thinking about the ways in which people wanted these opportunities. They wanted something that didn't feel like you had to be all buttoned up and uptight like you would expect to be in work. And ultimately that was the path. And I realized that one, it was needed, and two, people just wanted a meaningful opportunity to connect with folks. And so now that is sort of a big part of the work I do internally and the work I do outside, and really sort of thinking about the ways in which I merge all those things together. But for me, it came out of necessity. And if I didn't do it, I either would have gone home or I would remain in what I think was probably one of the only moments where I felt truly depressed was when I was living in Redwood City. So it was out of necessity and out of like sort of thinking about the ways in which I survive in a space that wasn't designed for me.
Yeah. No, thank y'all for sharing. Yeah, I can relate 100% from like going from North Carolina to moving to San Francisco and needing community. So, you know, totally get it. We'll switch things up a little bit, and especially in terms of order, but it's on the topic. But I'm curious, like, we have experienced a lot of traumatic events over the last year and a half, from racial inequities to talking about the pandemic and mass. With managing these communities, how have you had to like, let me see, like deal with difficult conversations, things that you may agree with or not agree with, or they come up and now you go from being, hey, I'm managing a community, or I'm organizing, to like, I'm a coach, I'm a therapist, so I got to be a facilitator to some of these hard conversations. Maurice, let's start with you.
I mean, so part of this is my job. I spend most of my time sort of thinking about how do you support people in difficult conversations and difficult situations. So it just feels like, I guess, a par for the course. But I think the difference is sort of being able to, or being forced to have those sort of conversations and sort of being like carrying people's burdens, not in person. I think that adds a layer that, one, I don't think many people were prepared for, and two, like sort of a dynamic where you just can't sort of like follow the same cues, follow the same sort of things that you could do to sort of like help people along. And so for me, it's really sort of thinking about like, how do I cultivate spaces that feel like, that still feel and give you the idea of being in person? Two, sort of thinking about the ways in which I like deploy like understanding and sort of create space for people to feel like they can sort of bring those things to me, and recognizing, one, I'm not a therapist. Two, we, you know, at the end of the day, like we have to sort of create the container for it. And so what I found is that, yes, I could be all those things for a lot of people. Yes, it is difficult to sort of cultivate community virtually. But the bigger part for me is like, okay, what am I doing to sort of being able to maintain that for myself? Because at the end of the day, you get depleted sort of always filling other people's cups. And so I really sort of had to figure out the ways in which I sort of keep going, how I can, you know, restore myself, even though I know that it's a constant battle and you're constantly sort of like pouring into other people. And I haven't really figured all of those things out. But I think sort of having a tribe of people who I can sort of lean on really helps to do that. And then I take the learnings that I get from those people and share those back to the folks that are looking for me to help cultivate that community. And then the last thing I'll say is I sort of really sort of been thinking about the ways in which I still sort of model and create those communities in different ways. So instead of just hosting a brunch in person, you know, we'll do virtual sessions. Instead of just sort of thinking about a meetup at a restaurant or a park, thinking about the ways in which you use Zoom and use other like mediums to be able to create those spaces, because otherwise, like, we all sort of sit in this vacuum and we aren't getting the things that we need. So I think just broadening our perspective around how we deliver it is really important on my end.
Thanks.
I'll go. So for me, as a reminder, so our members are entrepreneurs. And so it goes back to the promise that we have to them. And so we promise them that we'll hold them accountable to making progress, or for making progress, while developing them as CEOs and as human beings. And so through the last year and a half, through the pandemic, the racial justice uprising in this country, politics, so on and so forth, I saw our role as leading other leaders and making sure they are prepared as CEOs. So being a little bit proactive and saying, hey, how, as a CEO of your own company, how are you handling these complex topics? And so that all actually opens up a place for them to be very vulnerable and say something like, hey, I ain't got it figured out, or here's what I'm doing. And they start sharing with each other, what actually helps me as leader, because the reality is that I don't have it figured out either as I lead my own company, right? And so that actually creates a very interesting sense of community. We laugh together, we cry together, we share tips, so on and so forth. And then on the human level, for the most part, every week or at minimum every month, we're asking them to give their morale on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest, both professionally and personally. And so a few things happen there. Once they start saying they're 3 or below consistently, professionally or personally, we kind of step in. And because we're doing these in many cases in a small group setting via video, the other people in the group will step in and say, hey, how you doing? They'll do one-on-ones. We can use these. We can use the report outs as a way for them to explain further on the topics in which they're struggling. And then we surface those themes up to create a larger discussion where they can vent about particular problems. Because once you start, and for clarification, we have about 150 founders in our program from about 20 different states. And a lot of them are going through the same issues, but they just don't know it. It's the hero's journey. We tend to think that we're the only person going through the issue, but in reality, you know, it's one story with 1,000 different faces to it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I took out my journal to make some notes as we're going along, because this is some pretty good stuff. I see both of the experiences that you two guys were talking about. And, we have about the same number of people as Goody Nation, but there are folks who are across industries, somewhat well, it's a multi-generational group, but it's a little top heavy towards more senior and accomplished guys. But all of these men are leaders in their own right, in their own industries and doing different things. And we're sharing information across industries. But when you talk about the difficult conversations, like how should we respond to the murder of George Floyd, or how should we respond to the pandemic, or how do we actually lead into driving wealth in Black and under-resourced communities in the wake of the pandemic, like who leads, entrepreneurs lead, government lead. These are example of some of those topics, but we've covered even more and more, both in our weekly or biweekly calls, or in the emails that we share and have some heavy conversations. Fortunately for us, we were a little bit prepared, and I think it was a definitely more luck than planning, because we didn't plan for the pandemic. But we were trying to intentionally build a community that got more and more real with each other, and they got more and more involved and committed to each other, and they got more and more involved to delivering, to creating wealth and influence, but also to creating value in the communities that we came from, the communities that we wanted to serve. So we'd had tough conversations where we had brought, no offense to any conservatives who might be here, but we brought Republicans to what was a mostly Democratic party, no pun intended, and had like difficult conversations. We had conversations about our health and about community in our quarterly live events. So we were a little prepared for those sort of things. But the thing that really helped me is that I am a coach, right? I've been a coach and a mentor since all the way back in my Navy days, and I have some coaching clients, and I'll do some mentoring in business environments. So I had been facilitating some of those conversations before, and it gave me the ability to kind of step out of myself, listen to people and listen to trends, and try to put the belly button on, like grab the through line, as I like to describe it, through the different points of what we were really talking about, and try and get us to thinking through things together, respecting different perspectives, and actually coming out as a whole stronger and tighter as a community, where it was a safe place to air something that you wouldn't maybe talk about with some other folks. And I think that's the benefit of communities like these, where people have spaces they wouldn't normally have, with people they wouldn't normally expect to speak with, and they can know that they have somebody who's got their back, even if they're not around. Being there when you're not there, when you're not physically there, is hugely powerful.
Yeah. No, thank you all for sharing. I appreciate that. And yeah, I like I feel I might need to write some of these things out too, so some tips be shared, and so forth. With all you managing communities and dealing with life and work and jobs and dealing with a lot of other humans, we know what that can take on us, right? In terms of mentally, and as we're here to talk about mental health awareness, I'm curious, how do you refuel? How do you take time away from your community? How do you say, I need a break? Is it delegating, or is it, something else? So I'm curious your thoughts on that. And Phil, you want to start?
Yeah, that's a hard one, because as somebody said earlier today, the work is always there. I have come to the point where I say, schedule a day, schedule a week, set the goals and objectives, do as much as I can, or like they say in the 4 agreements, right? Try to be impeccable with your word and always do your best. And then, deal with it as you may, right? Sometimes a 30-second deep breath exercise just to settle myself is huge. And sometimes taking whatever comes, like sometimes we have a regular meeting and 3 people will show up, 8 people will show up, 18 people will show up. Just being present with whoever's there. The best conversation, some of the best we've had, with like 2 or 3 guys showed up, and and maybe a little late. But I found that if I focus on the process and not on the outcome, then I'm not depleted by something that might have disappointed me a year or two ago.
Awesome. Joey?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking to the wrong person when you say like stepping away or something like that. I think the community kind of flows through me like the force, right? And I'm a huge Star Wars person. I think for me, even using the Star Wars reference, it's our job to bring balance to the community, which means that we're not necessarily trying to solve the problem. We're just bringing balance to it, which also means if you watch Star Wars and stuff like that, this journey is ongoing and it will live past it. So one of the things that I do to which actually sounds kind of weird when I say it out loud, one of the things that I do to kind of step back is thinking about how I develop the next generation of ecosystem developers and community builders, right? What does that actually look like? And identifying, supporting, and empowering them to continue the work, like even in micro doses. So I can take a step back for a day, for 2 or 3 days, for a week or something like that, and making in doing that, the mission still goes on. The problem is still the fight to bring balance to the force is still there.
Awesome. I love that, Joey. That's cool.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think similarly, I don't know that I do a very good job of it. I think that it feels like there's always something else to be done. But one of the things that I sort of take in is that I can't solve every single problem every single day. Two, like I am no good to other people if I haven't sort of done the things for myself. Then I think the big piece for me is like sort of like what are the ways in which I can sort of step away from the thing so that I can sort of like refill my cup, for lack of a better term. So some of the things I try to do, therapy is one of those things, to sort of just create spaces for me to like get away from all of it. So taking vacations as much as I can, even if it's just for a few days. And then I think sort of what I find is when I'm around certain people, having just that opportunity to just like talk, chop it up, be able to break bread together in a smaller setting, also provides some reset for me. And then I think the other piece of it for me is like really thinking about what are the ways in which I like connect with the right folks so that one, I don't have to always do everything, and really sort of empower other folks to be able to sort of do the things that they do well in the space that I'm trying to cultivate, so that it's not just about sort of me and like the immediate people that lead the work. And then how do I then ensure that those people have the space, the opportunity, the resources to be able to live those things out? So really about empowering and creating that ecosystem, as Joey talked about, is a really, really important part of, I think, the longevity of community, and ultimately really thinking about the ways in which you scale community. You can't do that alone. It's literally impossible for you to scale something like that doesn't burn you out.
Yeah. And I feel like all three of you have alluded to this, but I'm curious, have there been times that the community has been there for you as unexpectedly or expected, that you was like, wow, I'm glad we all here together? And Joy, you want to start?
Yeah. Story was recent, like last week, 2 weeks ago. As I mentioned earlier, we laugh together, we cry together. I think that's a kind of indication of a good community. And for us, I had a situation on our team, and this is actually public. The guy posted it on LinkedIn. Got COVID, relatively young guy, healthy guy. Bottom line is almost lost. They gave him 1% chance of living, or less than 1% chance of making it out of ICU. And so the issue that I was struggling with as a leader of the company is, and again, I'm talking to other CEOs that are in our program, right? Is that I felt like as a leader, I had to be prepared to deliver the worst case scenario, or I had to be prepared in general, which meant that my mind had to go to like the worst case scenario. If I had to deliver the news to our team, so on and so forth. And just going to that place mentally was tough, right? I mean, even through the pandemic, we've seen each other's families and stuff on camera, and we've gone kind of closer, even though we're actually further apart. And so I just told them, like, hey, this is a situation, I'm struggling here. And they just kind of jumped right in and supported. I mean, again, these folks are leaders themselves, but he pretty much took over and started, to a certain extent, running our program for me. They saw me literally in real time struggling to deal with just in the situation overall.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
From my perspective, I don't know that I run like organized enough community to really sort of like say it on like a broader scale. I think the thing that comes to my mind is sort of what happens when I sort of hit a wall or hit a rough patch. There are a group of people based on the sort of events and programs and all the things I've sort of created that I've developed really meaningful friendships with. And so those folks are the people that show up. Those are the people that, like, hey, checking in, like, what's happening? What are you doing? And oftentimes the showing up for me now is sort of like pushing me to do the things that I say that I want to do. So I talk a lot about like building these intentional spaces. I talk a lot about like using these as mediums to take my work to the next level. But I hinge most of my time and experience to a company that pays me, ultimately. But these folks are pushing me to move beyond that. They're pushing me to really sort of think about how I prioritize my own vision over sort of like just investing into something else that isn't mine. And so I think that is one of the main things, especially over the last few weeks, where I sort of had this opportunity to really like build and scale the things that I want to do, but they're risky. And so being able to have those conversations, being able to lean on those people, being able to hear perspectives unlike the one that is sort of in the back of my head, don't do it, just stay comfortable, blah, blah, blah. Those folks have been the ones that are showing up and sort of giving me those perspectives to really lean into my own sort of brilliance and my own potential. So I would say that is at the core of how people have showed up for me recently.
Thanks.
I love hearing how people have showed up for each other, because it's another one of those things that defies those stereotypes that we hear about Black men, right? Because I haven't heard a single person talk about guys being too much in it for themselves or people not being willing to help. And that's, I believe, more of who we are, that people don't know and people don't hear about on the outside, right? It's exactly what our group is about, right? Really being there for each other, the story behind the knock. There are a number of times where I've walked into certain rooms that were mostly white, but like the other specks of color I saw in the room were part of the brothers' wingtip, right? And the more exclusive or high profile the experience, the more happy I was to see those guys, because I knew that I could always talk to somebody and get a straight skin on what they were seeing in the room. And we've seen that, and I try to create that and cultivate that for others, and trying to encourage that in the sort of conversations that we have and the way we work. And the guys showed up just like just like Joey was talking about. I said there was one time where there's two guys on the line, and I came in scratching my head, and I was like, "Gosh, I really don't know how to solve this problem." I was waiting for other people to show up, and one of the guys just started talking and asked me what was going on and talking about different ideas. Before I knew it, he suggested something that really got me out of a stuck place and brought a perspective from another entrepreneur, helping me solve a problem on my entrepreneurial journey that really moved me forward. And we've had other guys post in the email saying they are looking for support, or looking for a recommendation, or looking for a tip. And people just, people came out. I feel like that there's enough like trust and support in the group that people will stop what they're doing to look at that message and say, "Oh yeah, I got something for you." And the thing that really surprises me is guys who are out there who don't respond to much, right? But they see a subject and they go, "Oh, that one I can help," and they respond in like minutes, right? So I think it gives me confidence that our message reaches farther than we think it does, and the ripple effects. There are a lot of people who say, "Oh, I listen to all the things you guys are saying, or I listen to what you're writing. I don't contribute much, but keep doing it." And every time I think you're leading a community, you got to remember the ripples are farther than you can see, with the people who come and support you, and then with the people who actually are listening and who they impact to. And sooner or later, they come back around and they're like, "Hey, I really love this thing." And it's kind of like, "Thank you. Who who are you? where did I meet you? But it's those are the things I think that lift me both directly and indirectly.
Yeah, awesome, great. Well, I'm gonna see if anyone in the audience has a question. Feel free to use the ask a question feature or post a question in the chat. While you're thinking about that, I'm gonna ask one more. If y'all don't mind, do you mind sharing about your own wellness practice or mental health practice and your thoughts on like how we can increase the conversation around mental health in our community?
This is one where nobody wants to go first.
Yeah, I mean, so it's around like our mental health like practice and stuff like that. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a tough one, right? Because nobody wants to talk about mental or physical health, right? And honestly, I've had challenges with both in the last 18, 24 months. I'm sure everybody has had some. You know, I went to the Naval Academy. I grew up in places where you had to be pretty tough and pretty disciplined. So I find comfort in routine and structure and self-direction and things like that. I found that having meditation was helpful. I found that trying to journal was helpful. I found like reading or audiobooks in certain spaces of time were helpful. I found that actually, just staying on this practice of presence and embracing what I have, and not focusing on what I didn't, like a thankfulness practice, was really, really helpful. Because if I just had 5 minutes, I was like, I got 5 minutes to relax. Let me just look out the window and take in a nice day and like breathe, reset, and then get back into things. And the benefit of community when there's mental or physical health challenges is really huge, because all I needed was like 1 or 2 people to come in and say, "Hey, I know you got this thing going on. How you doing?" And I was lifted up, and I was able to kind of move forward through my own toughness, my own tough issue, but also pay it forward to other people. If I didn't hear from somebody in a certain period of time, I would try to make sure that I was on top of that for that other person. So it was a little bit of giving, putting out there what I wanted, and being thankful for what I had and what I got.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, I think for me, it's when embracing that common lyric, right? Knowing when you're weak is when you're really being strong. And then holding myself to the same standard that I hold our founders to. So, for example, when we asked them about their morale professionally and personally, we do the same thing with our team. We actually do the same exact exercise. So it forces me at 9 a.m. Monday morning when we're meeting with our executive team to give myself, and I go first, how I'm feeling on a scale of 1 to 5, both professionally and personally. And it's an opportunity. And if I really do what I'm supposed to do and I prepare for it sometime on Sunday, it allows me the time to really understand why I'm grading myself in this manner. And then if I find myself not at an A or maybe a B+, because that's cool too. If it's a B-, maybe it's somewhere in the C range, really figuring out who can I talk to about the reasons why. And then if I don't feel comfortable talking about it with, say, my wife or my parents or one of my best friends, then I also have to understand, I have to ask myself the hard question, why I'm not comfortable sharing this information. And going through that process is actually very helpful for me and kind of keeps me out of some dark places, quite honestly.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, and I'll quickly go. I think the big piece for me is sort of thinking and leaning into the people that I spend most time with. So using that as an opportunity to sort of, I feel like I am always sort of hearing other people's issues, always sort of carrying other people's burdens. So when it's time, sort of being honest with myself about, hey, I need some other perspective. I need some support here. Being able to create a moment for that to be true, and not sort of just let myself sort of continue to just like push through things, which is something that I usually do. So I've been trying to be better at that. I think one of the things that also helps my sort of mental health is like cooking, like using the thing that I say is really important to me as something just to be able to decompress, even if the food isn't for me, like just to be able to sort of like use that as a way to sort of shut all the other BS out, to create something cool, take some dope pictures, send the food to somebody if I need to. But just going through the motions of that helps. And then I think the last thing I'll say is, if I am serious about sort of being a creator of community, and if I'm not utilizing that as like part of my self-care, then I think that is, I need to either rethink the way in which I sort of move through my community, or ultimately decide like maybe that's not the right sort of thing for me. And so for me, it's like, how do I create more opportunities for me to learn from those folks, to lean on those folks, and ultimately not sort of carry all the burdens on my own.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, Phil, Joy, Maurice, I really, really appreciate the three of y'all being here and sharing. I also apologize. I know I don't reach out that often. Most of the time, unless it's like, hey, you want to speak? But I see y'all, and Phil, I'm on the list, the email list. I see the emails, and so I appreciate everything y'all are doing in the community, in your own communities and out in the world, being role models and leaders. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. It's great stuff, man.
All right, appreciate it. All right, see y'all. Take care.